كانوا شيعا كل حزب بما لديهم فرحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. It's time for Shaykh, right? 7:15? Yeah.
Jazakumullah khair, Abdul Hussein. And thank you so much for joining us on the night of the 24th of Ramadan. It is it's lacking night, and we're very happy to have Shaykh Rizwan. We're very honored to have him, and unfortunately, this is not a good turnout on our community side. Regardless, inshallah, people are watching online and following. Please, with Allah, salawat, invite Shaykh Rizwan and Arastu to the member.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. We have been devoting our discussions on these nights of Ramadan to looking at various companions of the Ma'sumin, of the Prophet or the Imams, and trying to learn lessons from some story in their life that is exemplary for us. We've looked at many of the companions have been positive role models. A couple of nights we looked at role models who made mistakes or sometimes deviated very far off the path. And even from their deviation and kind of condemnable end, we were able to learn important lessons about what we should not do and how we should stay on the path of following the Ma'sum. The companion I want to look at tonight is one who we should know a lot more about and talk more about, but again, I don't think we pay enough attention to him. His name is Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman. So Hudhayfa, is his name familiar to you all? Probably not very much. So sometimes it's unusual. It's a mystery why there are people who should be at the forefront of our knowledge and they aren't. Sometimes it seems like we kind of pick a couple of people, a couple of names, a couple of ideas, and those become all our Islam and all our knowledge of Islam, and then everything else is kind of tossed by the wayside. So when I tell you about Hudhayfa, I think you'll be surprised why you don't know about him, because we all should know much about him. Hudhayfa is one of, some of our ulama refer to him as one of the Arkan Arba'a. Al-Arkan al-Arba'a. This is not a term that we get from ahadith, but it's something that our ulama have developed to refer to these four individuals who stuck with Amir al-Mu'mineen right from the death of the Prophet on and never wavered in their faith for a second. So we typically remember only Miqdad and Salman and Abu Dhar as three of those arkan. And then the fourth place is between these two brothers. Brothers through the Aqdul Ukhuwa, the brotherhood that Rasulullah made between the Muhajirin and Ansar, between Ammar bin Yasir and Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. All right, so there's some of the ulama, they think that Ammar held this fourth position, and some of them say that Hudayfa held this fourth position. But in either case, and some say it's not four, let's make it should be five. Like why are we limiting it to four? We don't get arkan arba'a from a hadith that we should find only four people. We've noticed that these four people were there with Imam Ali even after Saqifa. Many people, and if you look at the biographies of many individuals, many that we've even talked about, it'll say, for instance, raja'a ila Amir al-Mu'mineen. So and so, they came back to Amir al-Mu'mineen. So after Saqifa, I don't know if we can fully understand it. For us, we look at Saqifa and we think, obviously this was a conspiracy, obviously this is a wrong thing, and hopefully we would have been able to dismiss it and not give in to the bullying that happened afterwards to get everyone to give bay'ah to Abu Bakr. But from what we see of history, it seems like it was a very difficult thing to do. Even those 70,000, 100,000 people who were at Ghadir Khum, who saw Rasulullah, who heard him with their own ears say, Man kuntu mawla fa'aliyun mawla, even those, the ones who were in Medina, when Saqifa happens and word goes out that everyone's agreed, it's a done deal, we've all agreed that Abu Bakr is going to be the Khalifa, bay'ah has already taken place, it's already done, you give your bay'ah too. People, they bought it and they did it. It seems like they didn't make the connection that somehow there's a disconnect between what I just heard a few weeks ago at Ghadir Khum and this bay'ah for Abu Bakr. It didn't, they didn't make the connection. This is somehow out of line with that, that wasiyah and that exhortation that Rasulullah gave, that we're supposed to wali man wala wa adi man ada. Ali is supposed to be our litmus test. So there are only these handful of people, 4, 5, 6 people who never doubted, who never left him, who never gave their bay'ah and didn't even think about it. And this Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman is one of those individuals. So that right away gives us a sense of how, what kind of status he has. He is one of the archetypal Shia. Right alongside Salman, Abu Dhar al-Miqdad, and Ammar bin Yasir, we have Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. All right. So then we should question ourselves also in our own learning and our lack of knowledge. Why don't I know about this person? Why haven't I not read about him? What's wrong with my knowledge that I haven't pursued this and figured out who these people are? These are the people that we should know. And if we don't know them, there's something wrong with our own reading on Islam or learning about Islam, that we can ignore someone so significant as Hudayfa. So I'll tell you a couple of incidents, couple of things about Hudayfa that will again give us a sense of who he is and what are some of the things that he did, and then I'll focus on a couple of stories like I have in the past to see if we can derive some lessons from those stories. So Hudayfa, he is of course a companion of Rasulullah. He lives all the way up until the Khilafah of Uthman. And then just after, actually, he dies about 40 days after Uthman dies, after Uthman is killed. All right, so actually he lives on his deathbed into the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and I'll read to you his dying wish and his dying wasiyah to his sons, and his gratitude to Allah for having lived long enough to finally see Amir al-Mu'mineen in his rightful place as Khalifatul Muslimin. So just as that happens, he's in Mada'in, he dies there. If you've been to ziyarah for Salman and Hudayfa ibn Yaman, they're both buried in Mada'in. Their graves are there. You can visit their graves. It's southeast of Baghdad. So he dies there. He never gets to, actually give bay'ah in person to Amir al-Mu'mineen, but he does the best he can on his deathbed. So that's his timeline. He dies in the year 36, early in the year 36, just after Uthman is killed, about 40 days after that. Now we're told that he has kind of an interesting state. You know how, we have Muhajirun who are Meccans or people from other places who do hijrah to Medina, and we have Ansar who are the local Medinans. So that's the major category of the companions of the Prophet, Muhajirun and Ansar. وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ comes in that verse as well. So these were terms that were important. The Quran itself uses these terms for the two people. Hudhayfa is in kind of an interesting position, and the Prophet actually gives him a choice. He says, خَيَّرَنِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ بَيْنَ الْهِجْرَةِ وَالنُّصْرَةِ. He couldn't quite categorize him properly, so Rasulullah gave him the choice. You get to choose whether you want to be counted amongst the Muhajirun or amongst the Ansar. Why? Because this Hudhayfa, his father's laqab, his father's title is Yaman. There's some discussion whether it's his father or grandfather who was called Yaman. Yaman is the same as Yemeni. Right? So his father, whose name was Hasil, he's known as Yaman, Yemeni. And so apparently they were from Yemen, they were from outside of Medina, but then this Yaman, he comes into Medina fleeing some problem. He had some problem, maybe he had done something, and he flees to Medina, to Yathrib at the time, and he seeks refuge there, and he marries a local Medinan lady. And then they have Hudhayfa as their child, and then they end up moving out of Medina, all before the Prophet comes. They move out of Medina and live outside of Medina. And then, when Rasulullah does his hijrah and comes to Medina, they both come, father and son come to Medina, and they accept Islam right in the beginning of the hijrah. But they get permission from Rasulullah. So this is also interesting, and I don't think we pay attention to this so much. When you converted to Islam early on, it wasn't good enough that you just convert to Islam and that's it. You just continue living. It was an obligation for people, once you said your shahadatain, you also had to do hijrah and come to Medina to live. Right? So you couldn't just say, for instance, come to Rasulullah, ask him, what do you teach? And he says, he tells you, you say, I believe in it, let me say the shahada, and then you go home. That was not the deal. When you converted, when you said shahadatain in the Prophet's in the Medinan period, before Fathu Mecca, then you were agreeing to not only the tenets of Islam in terms of belief and practice, but you were agreeing to do hijrah to Medina. Right? And this is in the Quran, in Surah Al-Anfal, the verse tells us this. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَهَاجَرُوا وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آوَوا وَنَصَرُوا أُولَٰئِكَ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. All right, so those people who believe and do hijrah and fight with their own money and putting their own lives on the line for God's sake, and those who give protection and aid, these people are awliya of one another. These are friends and allies of one another. That's not so clear for what I'm saying. Then he says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يُهَاجِرُوا مَا لَكُمْ مِنْ وَلَايَتِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى يُهَاجِرُوا. Those people who believe but don't do hijrah, you have no walaya with them. You have no connection with them. They don't benefit as citizens of Medina, of this new Islamic state. To be a citizen, you have to do hijrah and come. They don't deserve your protection, for instance. If they're attacked, the Prophet, like the pact of Medina, the constitution of Medina that was made between the Prophet and the people of Medina, those who don't do hijrah, they're not included in the agreements there and the protections and all of that. Right? So this was a big deal. You had to do hijrah to be included as a citizen of the ummah at this time. Now, you could seek a concession. There were people who asked Rasulullah, is it okay? I have some things I need to take care of. I have an elderly mother, for instance, I have to take care of back in my village. Do you give permission for me to have an exemption for the hijrah rule and go back to my mother, take care of her? And Rasulullah would give that permission. But it had to be that kind of a thing where you agreed to do hijrah, but will you give me an exemption for this reason or that reason? And Rasulullah would give that permission in many cases. So it seems like Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman and his father, probably his father in particular, seeks this permission from Rasulullah. And he gives them permission to go back to wherever they were, and they stay there, even though they've said the Shahada. There must have been some good reason. It wasn't that they were flaking or they were trying to shirk responsibility, but we don't know exactly what the reason was. Then when word reaches them of Badr, maybe not Badr itself, but the lead up to Badr, then they come to Medina saying, okay, the Prophet needs us now, so they come to Medina, both father and son. But on their way into Medina, the logistics are not totally clear for me, but it seems like they encounter the Quraysh. Whether they encounter the army or the caravan or what exactly, but they encounter them, and the Quraysh capture them and they threaten to kill them because they say, we presume you're going to Medina to help Muhammad against us, so we're going to kill you. And they are able to talk their way out of it, and they say that no, we were not going to help him, we're simply going to Medina, and they make them pledge that you will not fight against us. And so both father and son they make the pledge that we will not fight against you, and we will go to Medina. And so then when they go to Medina, here's where the logistics are not so clear. Has Rasul already left or is he still in Medina? But his biography says that Hudayfa and his father, they went to Rasulullah and said, now what do? We made this pledge. Do we have to abide by the pledge, or can we ignore the pledge because it was with mushrikeen, for instance, and can we fight for you? And Rasulullah says, no, you made a pledge, you have to abide by the pledge. He says, Allah will help us, unfortunately you can't fight with us. Allah will help us and replace whatever benefit we would have gotten from you through other means, but you have to abide by your pledge that you made, even if it's to mushrikeen. So the two of them, they don't get to fight in Badr. In Hudayfa's biography, we'll see after this, Uhud and on, he fights in every single battle with Rasulullah, and even in Amir al-Mu'mineen's battles and so forth. Sorry, not Amir al-Mu'mineen's battle. I take that because he died just at the beginning of the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But all of Rasulullah's battles he fought in, besides Badr. One very beautiful story of his is that in the Battle of Uhud, his father is one of those people. So if you remember just at the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims first pushed forward. They're able to defeat the mushrikeen, but then they get greedy. The archers who are there as a safety mechanism to prevent the mushrikeen from attacking again, they abandon their post to get the booty of war. And once they abandon their post, then Khalid bin Walid is able to lead a contingent that comes and attacks from the rear of the Muslims, and it causes such confusion, and then finally the Muslims are defeated. As a stalemate, you can say. But many Muslims die in that after battle, whereas in the battle itself they had been victorious. And that's when Hamza, for instance, is killed, and many other people are killed. So in this confusion, the Muslims flee. They're just trying to save their own life. They forget about Rasulullah, they forget about any purpose, and they flee. And we talked about this a few days ago when we were talking about Sahl ibn Hunayf. So Sahl ibn Hunayf was one of the very few. Imam Ali alayhi salam, Sahl ibn Hunayf, these were two of the 3 or 4 individuals, Talha even, right? So these individuals are known that they stuck with Rasulullah to defend him until the end and protected him and were able to get him safely off the battlefield. This Yaman, Hudayfa ibn Yaman's father, he made that intention too. He was in the confusion, he was trying to figure out where to go, and he talks with another companion, he says that, what do we have to lose? Let's go and let's protect Rasulullah with our lives, and inshallah Allah will give us shahada. And so he is trying to figure out where to go, and he goes towards Rasulullah, and in the confusion, some of the Muslim soldiers kill him. So he's killed by the Muslims themselves, and they don't realize what's happening. Hudayfa sees what's happening. He's calling out, it's my father, but it's too late, and one of the Muslims ends up killing his father. And it seems like this happened, in Uhud in particular. You can imagine, like, there are no uniforms. You don't have clear demarcations of who's on which side. The Muslims did have a chant. Ya Mansuru Amit was the war cry that they would chant so they could identify one another. It was like a code word. They would say this and they could identify each other because they were saying Ya Mansuru Amit. But it wasn't so clear, who's the enemy, especially once the lines are mixed and there's so much confusion, and now you have, Quraysh on one side, Quraysh on the other side, the Muslims are in the middle, and everything's getting mixed up. It was very easy to lose one's bearings, and so Yaman ends up getting killed. So one of the points of nobility of Hudayfa is that in the aftermath of all this, Rasulullah, he makes the determination, he says that those who were killed like Yaman, mistakenly by Muslims themselves, like friendly fire, they are also shaheed. They are also given the rank of shahada by Allah. They are martyrs in God's eyes, and their reward is sealed, is guaranteed. Hudayfa's response, right? Just imagine if you were in that position, maybe you'd be vengeful. How dare you? You killed my father. I was telling you, and why didn't you listen to me? And how could you kill my father? And be very vengeful towards the Muslims, be bitter. He is given blood money from Baytul Mal, or from the booty of the war. Rasulullah gives him blood money for his father. This is part of the Sharia, that a human being has a monetary worth. The life of a human being has a monetary value. And in cases of accidental killing of someone, then the compensation for the heirs of the person who was killed accidentally is the blood money. There's no qisas in that case. If it's an accident, there's no one's killed. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That doesn't happen. But the person who murdered, the person who did the accidental killing, he is responsible for, not he himself, but his heirs. That's also a beautiful part of the Sharia. So say if you're driving along, let's say it's a Muslim place, just to make it easier. So you're driving along and somebody walks out in front of you and you end up killing the person, a fellow Muslim, right? You didn't have any intention. This is not murder, but the person dies. So this does not go it was an accident, so nothing happens. Islamically, I am liable for the blood money for this person, but not me myself, my aqila. It's almost like an insurance policy that's baked into the Sharia and the inheritance system. So if I was driving and I ended up accidentally killing that person, I'm not liable for the blood money for that person. My heirs, those who stand to inherit from me if I were to die, they are responsible to put up the blood money for me to pay to the heirs of the person who I killed. So it creates this kind of bond, like silatul rahim, the rahim that we have. We have these mutual rights and responsibilities. Just as I stand to benefit through inheritance from my father or my brother, I also am liable in case they get into a situation where they accidentally kill someone. I'm also liable to pay the blood money on their behalf to the victim. So it creates another layer of interconnectedness and liability that we have to be careful of in these situations. So anyway, a long story short, the Prophet doesn't hold that person liable out of Baytul Mal because there was a confusion of the whole army and the military thing. So out of Baytul Mal, he pays the blood money for Hudayfa ibn Yaman's father to Hudayfa as the heir. Hudayfa publicly declares that I forgive whatever happened, whoever perpetrated, I forgive them. And I call down Allah's forgiveness on that person. And then to really kind of demonstrate his own connectedness and his disinterest from any sort of anger, he gives whatever blood money he received fully legitimately, he gives it as charity. So this is a recurring theme with Hudayfa. He has this ability to see truth and to see what's right and put all personal feelings aside and just follow truth and follow the right till the end. So this is one of his manaqib, one of the things that he's praised for is this forgiveness that he was able to find within himself for the people who killed his father wrongfully in the Battle of Uhud. So that's one lesson that we have to, one paragon that we have to derive lessons from. How can we find that kind of forgiveness in ourselves? Sometimes we have grudges against one another that are far less than one killing the other one's father. This is a huge loss for him, but he was so forgiving. And we sometimes have small grudges because someone said something or did something very small or took my spot or did this or did that, and then we don't forget it till the end of our days and we hold that grudge against that person. I never want to, if he's serving iftar, then I'm not going to come that day because I have a bad feeling against him. If he's leading prayers, I'm not going to come that day. If he's if he's present, I'm going to be absent. I can't be seen in the same place with that person because of my grudge against him. So being able to find this kind of ability to forgive within ourselves is one of our lifelong struggles. Easier said than done, granted. But that's something that we should hold Hudayfa up as an example and try to think, how am I able to see beyond this particular, offense that the person may or may not have committed, but I feel that he's committed. So I think one thing that Hudayfa does, that I just mentioned, is he sees the long view. He can see the big picture. He understands the circumstances, that the whole purpose of the battle is that Islam should prevail. The purpose of the battle is that Rasulullah should be protected and he should continue to live to be able to do what he needs to do. That's the goal. We are all foot soldiers. We are here trying to do what Rasulullah told us to do. Sometimes we mess up, like these people, the archers, they messed up and they lost sight of the real picture. They started thinking about their own personal pockets and trying to fill them, and they messed up, and so we suffered because of that. In the confusion, this person ended up killing my father. This doesn't have the action of this person in confusion, thinking this was the enemy and killing him. This is not somehow against that big picture. It's not that this person is an enemy of Islam or enemy of my father or enemy of me, or he did something intentionally to cause this pain for me. He sees the big picture, he sees what's really important, and he understands that this was a confusion, this was a mistake that was made. And so he's able to see all of that and find a way to forgive that person. And then it seems like he doubles down on that. He wants to maybe even not punish himself, but like discipline himself by giving away the blood money. It almost seems like he feels like if I accept the blood money, I am in a way saying that he was wrong, I did have a right, and I'm accepting this as compensation for it. So he wants to maybe break his own soul, break any vestige of greed that might be there by even giving away the blood money that he has full right to, and give it to charity. So that way of thinking is something very special. It exists in these awliya of Allah, and it's something that we have to idealize and then see if we can also find ways to do that, to justify what another person did, while it may seem offensive, but to try to empathize and think, well, why might he have said it? Or to just be able to forget it altogether. Or to confront them in a way that's beneficial and helpful. How can I resolve this with this person? And maybe I can't just forget it because it'll keep eating away at me, why he did this, why he said this. So maybe I need to go and talk to him, but I should talk to him in a way that's going to reconcile, that's going to make the situation better. Not that I come and I challenge him and I prove and I argue and I just want to establish that I'm right and you were wrong and you shouldn't have said this. Now, that's not helpful. But if I go to him and say, you said this, it was hurtful to me, if you could explain why you said it, or somehow find a way to resolve. I felt bad. I don't know if you realize how bad I felt because of what you said, how offended I felt. If you didn't mean it, or something else was happening, if you could explain it, it would help me to be able to forget about this incident. But the whole point is, how can I repair this breach in the relationship between me and a fellow Muslim? Because that's the end goal. That's the long game. And this particular offense is very small, and this relationship shouldn't be broken because of such a small thing. All right, recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the virtues that Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman is famous for is that he had knowledge of the munafiqeen. He was able to identify who were munafiqeen in the community. Now here also it's unclear to me. There are two ways to understand this. One way it's presented in his biographies is that this was a kind of a divine tawfiq, a divine gift of insight that he was given, that he could look at you and he knew that you were munafiq. He could see that, no, you're a believer, you're a kafir, but you're a munafiq. He could identify that in people. And this was just because of his virtue, because of his discipline, Allah had given him this particular gift. It's a mixed gift. He himself recognized that this was also a burden, because he could recognize it, but he also wasn't allowed to say anything. He wasn't allowed to disclose this to anyone. There is a more natural explanation for this as well. It wasn't that he could identify any munafiq and see into people's hearts, but he knew particular munafiqeen because of a particular incident that took place. So I'll tell you the story very briefly. On the return from the Battle of Tabuk, not really a battle, but the Tabuk expedition. Right? Tabuk, there was no engagement with the Byzantine Empire. The Prophet took an army, a very large army, more than 10,000. 10 or multiple of 10,000 north to the Byzantine borders, to Tabuk. And again, this is one of his first international engagements, now going up against the empire of the time. And by the time he gets there, the Byzantine Empire, the forces have dispersed and there's no engagement. And he returns. On the return, an incident happens at a place called Aqaba Dhi Fiq. It's the incident of Aqaba. So you have several Aqabas. Sometimes it's confusing. You have the Aqaba, Bay'atul Aqaba, which happens in Mina, and and then this Aqaba also. And there are other incidents that are called Aqabas. Aqaba is basically like a mountain pass. Right? You have a mountain range, and then you have like a valley, or you have a break in the mountains where you can go through. That tight spot that you can squeeze through to get through the mountain range is called an Aqaba. So it's a pass. So this Aqaba Dhi Fiq, what happens is we have this huge army that's trying to move through, and so Rasulullah tells the army that you go through the valley because there's enough space and it'll be, there's enough room for you all to maneuver through. But he himself, for some reason, he decides he wants to take a more precarious route over the mountain through this Aqaba. So instead of taking this longer route, which is wider, he takes a shortcut through the mountain itself. And when he goes, he only takes 2 companions. So he's riding camel or horse, whatever he's riding, and these 2 brothers, Ammar bin Yasir and Hudhayfah ibn al-Yaman. Right? So these 2 are his companions. One's leading the horse in front, one's coming from behind, and they walk with Rasulullah on this Aqaba, this very narrow mountain pass. Now, when the munafiqeen in the army of Rasulullah see that he's going on this precarious mountain road, they think this is our chance to kill him. So we have some of the Muslims from the army of Rasulullah coming back from Tabuk. There are 12 of them. They conspire together and they say, let's go up ahead of the Prophet, and when he comes by us, we'll either scare his horse and throw him off the mountain, or somehow they want to kill him in a way that makes it look like an accident. So they line themselves up on the mountain pass, and the Prophet goes with these 2 companions. So we're told that as he gets closer to there, Hudhayfah is suspicious. He hears something or sees something, and so he goes and he runs ahead and he flushes them out. He scares their horses or whatever animals they have, and they are discovered, and so they suddenly run and they escape. The Prophet sees who they are, and Hudhayfah sees who they are. And it becomes a kind of a secret between the 2 of them. It seems like Ammar was in the back, so he doesn't see them, but the Prophet and Hudhayfah see them. And they know them by name. They know exactly who these 12 people are. But the Prophet makes Hudhayfah promise not to disclose who these people are. So this might be the explanation for this idea that he has knowledge of the munafiqeen. It may not be all munafiqeen that he can see into people's hearts. It might be this list of 12 people at the incident of Aqaba. because of that, he came to know these 12 people. So everyone knows the story now amongst the companions. They know that Hudayfa has this knowledge of who these 12 people are, but he's also sworn to secrecy. Hudayfa asked Rasulullah, why? Now you know these people, they wanted to kill you. Why don't we go after them and kill them? We know who they are. We don't need witnesses, we don't need anything. We know, you and I both saw them, we know who they are. The Prophet's response is that I don't want people to talk and say that when Muhammad needed these men, he used them, and once he didn't need them, he killed them. Right? This is not a public crime. It was not something that was known to everyone. It didn't even happen. It was stopped before it happened. And he doesn't want that perception that people think that he is opportunistic with his companions. He uses them and discards them. Yeah. So very important, principle stances that we see from Rasulullah, from Hudayfa. But going forward, so Hudayfa, I told you, he's a companion of the Prophet, but then he lives through these 25 years of the Khilafah of the other three Khulafa. And we know that Umar in particular, Umar al-Khattab, he knew that Hudayfa knew who the Munafiqeen were. He would see if Hudayfa didn't attend a particular janazah prayer, then Umar would refuse to read the janazah prayer on that person, because he assumed that this must be one of Munafiqeen. That's why Hudayfa's not here. That was the only way that he imagined that he could figure out what the list was. So that's, it's an anecdote, but it also, again, shows Hudayfa's standing amongst his peers, amongst the other companions, that they knew him to be like this, upstanding, a source of, this secret knowledge, one of the Ashabu Sir, kind of a secret confidant of the Prophet. All right, recite wa salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Hudayfa is employed as governor. He is someone he's also an all-rounder on the battlefield in terms of knowledge, in terms of fiqh. There are instances where he is called on by Amir al-Mu'mineen to go and make judgment between people. And he makes a judgment, and when he reports, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you did exactly right. That's exactly what I would have said too. So he has that kind of knowledge of fiqh that he is then relied upon by Amir al-Mu'mineen to go and take care of a job. He is also employed as governor. So I believe it's in Umar's time. I'm not so sure if it's Umar's time or before or after. But anyway, Hudayfa is appointed as governor of Madain, the place where he's now buried. He was made governor there. And then after some time, he is recalled and Salman al-Farisi is put in his place. And then when Salman dies and is buried there, then Hudayfa is once again employed by Uthman to be governor for a second time in Madain. And then he also dies and is buried right next to Salman. So they're both buried there in Madain. This raises a question, I think, for us, and I just wanted to address that as well. Like, what do we think about people who accepted this kind of employment under the Khulafa, or fought in the wars of expansion under the Khulafa? Because we know Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he did not fight in any war. The war into Iran, the war against Egypt and Alexandria, he didn't participate in any of these wars that were started by Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman. His policy was, I don't fight. But we see his companions, all of them, they do. They fight, and when they are called on to take up governorships and do different tasks by the government, they do participate in those things. So this raises the question, are they doing it with his sanction? Are they doing it against his sanction? What's happening? So I think one of the things to understand is that Rasulullah himself, in his latter days, we know that he was starting to look to the horizons of the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. So by the end of his life, all of the tribes of Arabia, basically the entire Arabian Peninsula, everyone had accepted Islam. At some level, a tribal leader had come and accepted, and so the whole tribe now becomes Muslim. Now, at what level is their knowledge? How deep is it? That's not, we see that some of them revert right away. As soon as Saqifa happens, they become murtad and they abandon Islam because they say this is not what we signed up for. That it would become like a free-for-all, and people would steal the khilafah and these kinds of things. So we're not going to pay our zakah to this usurping khalifa. And if this is what Islam is, then we abandon Islam. So people left Islam because of Saqifa. But Rasulullah started to write letters, send messengers out beyond the borders of Arabia. And we have actually documentation of all these letters. There's a beautiful book called Makatibur Rasul by one of our ulama from Qom, Ahmadi Miyanaji. And it's a 3-volume work where he's collected every single document that we have record of Rasulullah writing a letter from like a one-liner that he wrote to some messenger to go do something, to full-fledged letters to the kings of this place and the emperors of that place. All those letters are documented, and he gives great commentary and historical context to all of those. So, recite with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I lost my track of thought. So the Prophet was looking to, and if you look at the letters that he sends, the letters say, I am the messenger of God, accept Islam, or the jizya, or prepare to fight. He gives an ultimatum like that. And so whoever is taking the letter would be there to answer questions, to explain what does Islam mean, what does the Prophet stand for, to teach them if they want to know. And then they have these 2 choices. Either they accept to become Ahlul Dhimma under the Prophet's rule, and they pay jizya, or prepare for war. Right? So this was the Prophet's intentions. He was writing these letters to make known that now he's coming after all these illegitimate governments, to allow people to have the freedom to be able to understand Islam and accept of their own free will. But then the Prophet passes away before he's able to execute those. So it's natural that Amir al-Mu'mineen would take the reign and would push that forward and do the same thing and actually act on those expansionist policies and go after the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire and the Alexandrian regent, all these different people, and topple them if he needs to be able to allow people to learn about Islam. Of course, he's not able to do it because of Saqifa. But the policies, the expansion occurs properly under Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, especially the first 2. Right? And so the mission is in line with what the Prophet envisioned. Yes, they sometimes did it wrong. Sometimes the commanders would do wrong things. Like Khalid bin Walid is infamous for this, for going and being excessively brutal, for killing people, not giving them the chance to give an answer one way or the other. And sometimes in the case of Malik ibn Nuwayra, infamously, he goes and he kills Malik ibn Nuwayra and then takes his wife. These are Muslims, Shia, and he takes his wife and has relations with her on the very night that he kills the husband. And when this comes back to Abu Bakr, he wants to discipline Khalid bin Walid for this. So things like that definitely happened that were terrible, that were crimes, and those people will be punished in hellfire, inshallah. Was something that was in line with what Rasulullah wanted to happen. And so it seems like Imam Ali gave sanction to his companions that you can participate in these. I can't do it because of protest, but you are allowed to do it. I'm allowing you to do it. You participate in these because I'm keeping an eye on the operations. I know what's happening, and this is fine for you to participate in. It is in line with what I would have also done if I had been in power. And it serves the purpose of Islam well, that these empires and kings should be toppled so that people can learn about Islam. And so we have individuals like Hudayfa, like Salman, like Ammar, fulfilling these roles in different places as governors, and that is perfectly fine. It was under the auspices of their master Amir al-Mu'mineen that they were doing all of this. Let me share one last thing with you. This is a beautiful wasiyah that we have from Hudayfa to his people in Madain, and then particularly to his sons. He has 2 or 3 sons, and this is his dying wish for them. So it says that the report tells us that he was sick on his deathbed in Madain or Kufa in the year 36. فَبَلَغَهُ قَتْلُ عُثْمَانَ وَبَيْعَةُ النَّاسِ لِعَلِيٍّ. News of Uthman's murder and Ali alayhi salam's the bay'ah of people with Ali ibn Abi Talib came to him. فَقَالَ أَخْرِجُونِي وَادْعُوا الصَّلَاةَ جَمَاعَةً. Like, take me out into the masjid and make the adhan call everyone together for Salatul Jama'ah. This is the way that they would gather everyone together. Even if it wasn't prayer time, everyone would come together so they could make big announcements. فَوَضِعَ عَلَى الْمِنْبَرِ He was somehow gotten onto the minbar, and he was able to sit here so he could speak to the people. فَحَمِدَ اللَّهَ وَأَثْنَى عَلَيْهِ وَصَلَّى عَلَى النَّبِيِّ وَعَلَى آلِهِ So he begins with praise of Allah and salat on the Prophet and his family. ثُمَّ قَالَ أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّ النَّاسِ قَدْ بَايَعُوا عَلِيًّا The people in Medina have given bay'ah to Ali, he says. فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ وَانصُرُوا عَلِيًّا وَوَازِرُوهُ So he says, I admonish all of you to fear God and help Ali and support him. فَوَاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَعَلَى الْحَقِّ آخِرًا وَأَوَّلًا He says, Ali is on the right path. Always was and always will be. وَإِنَّهُ لَخَيْرُ مَنْ مَضَى بَعْدَ نَبِيِّكُمْ وَمَنْ بَقِيَ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ He is the best person after the Prophet that has ever walked this earth, and he will be the best until the end of time. So he has that kind of recognition of who Amir al-Mu'mineen is. ثُمَّ أَطْبَقَ يَمِينَهُ عَلَى يَسَارِهِ ثُمَّ قَالَ اللَّهُمَّ اشْهَدْ Then he's sick, he knows he's gonna die, he can't make it to Medina to give his bay'ah in person, so he puts his right arm on his own left arm, and he looks up to Allah and says, Allahumma ashhad, bear witness, I hereby give my bay'ah to Amir al-Mu'mineen. So the physical way they would give bay'ah is by not just shaking hands. The person who's the governor, the wali, would have his arm like this on top, and the other person would bring their hand from below, and they would grab hands like that. Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, like that kind of thing. The wali, the prophet, whoever is taking the bay'ah is on top, and the other person will come from below, and they'll shake hands like this to say that I give my bay'ah to you. So he does it to himself because he can't get there. He's the governor of, appointed by the ruler, and now he's also a citizen, so it's like he's playing both roles, has both hats on, giving bay'ah to himself vicariously for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yeah, so he says, Allahumma ashhad inni qad baya'tu aliyan. I hereby give my bay'ah to Ali. And then he says, Alhamdulillah alladhi abqani ila hadha al-yawm. I praise God that he allowed me to live until this day, to finally see Amir al-Mu'mineen rightfully in the place where he always should have been. Then he tells his two sons, Safwan and Sa'id, I think is another third son, but this one only mentions two, Safwan and Sa'ad. He says, Ihmilani wa kuna ma'ahu. He says, always be with Ali. فَسَتَكُونُ إِلَهُ حُرُوبٌ كَثِيرًا فَيَهْلِكُ فِيهَا خَلْقٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ Be with Ali because there are going to be many wars coming up, and many people are going to die in these wars. So what is his advice to his own sons, his blood, his lineage? And you think, okay, we're going to flee, get out of here, get out of the fitna, save yourselves, there's going to be so much fitna. What does he say? فَاجْتَهِدَا أَن تُسْتَشْهَدَا مَعَهُ Do your utmost to try to become martyrs in his path. And that's his dying wish for his two sons. Be with him, support him, and do your best to try to be killed in his defense and in his service. فَإِنَّهُ وَاللَّهِ عَلَى الْحَقِّ By God, he is with the truth. وَمَنْ خَالَفَهُ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ And whoever opposes him is on falsehood. All right. So that's his dying wasiyah to his children. That's also the way he lived his own life. This Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman is one of those paragons that we should hold up, but we should know about and try to emulate. And his ability to see truth and see the long game and understand what's really important, and then put personal desires, personal even grudges, all that aside, and crush those so that he can always stay in the line of the truth and in the service of the truth. Not only him, but even his blood and his progeny. He wants them to die for the sake of Ali, and that would be his greatest pride. Allah, we ask you to shower your mercy and blessings on Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Help us, Allah, to follow in the footsteps of these greatest of the Ma'sumeen's companions. Accept all of our deeds during this month of Ramadan. Forgive us for all of our sins and keep us in the future on the path of Ali and the Ahlul Bayt. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.